This is the Modern Motherhood Podcast from All Mom Does. I'm Julie Lyles Carr, and this is a special episode of the podcast. It's our Christmas episode, and I want to wish you and yours a very, very Merry Christmas. You know, on this episode each year, I just take the time to just talk to you. We don't have one of the guests that we typically have on. I just share with you from my heart the things that this season means to me. Christmas has long been my favorite holiday, and there have been Christmases that were just absolutely magical. I think back to when I was a kid. I have to say, my mom and dad really did a good job making Christmas feel very special. We grew up, for the most part, in Southern California, so the weather did not exactly seem like storybook Christmas at all, but the inside of our home was just bedazzled as far as I was concerned. My mom and dad, their living room in that house in Southern California had a very cool sunken living room, so you would step down onto this really thick shag carpet in our quote-unquote formal living room, and it had really high ceilings, like an A-frame type of a ceiling. And so we would go to the local grocery store every year that carried Christmas trees, and my mom and dad would choose the tallest Christmas tree. I remember as a child feeling like that this Christmas tree had to have been 15 feet tall. I'm sure it probably was not, but that's what it felt like. And it fit in this one particular spot in that peak of the ceiling in that sunken living room. And we always got those icicles. How many of you remember the icicles? They are like these little strips of sort of flexible aluminum foil that we would put all over that tree. We had the big colored bulbs and all kinds of Snoopy ornaments and toy-looking ornaments. I'm telling you, the night before Christmas, my two brothers, Rob and Dave, and I, we could barely sleep. The anticipation was so much. Everything was so heightened. And in the morning, when my parents would slide that pocket door that separated the bedroom wing from that formal living room, we would barrel through there just with full burners on. We could not wait to get under that Christmas tree. And I remember several Christmases that very much in my childhood seemed like the perfect Christmas. I mean, exactly what I had hoped it would be. I got the toy that I wanted, and everything just seemed so magical, and it was all the food that I liked. And my mom would always get that sugar candy that she would put in a pretty dish, and all of it would just come together in such a beautiful way. Well, when I got married and started having children of my own, I wanted Christmas to feel that way for my kids. And so I would just about make myself crazy this time of year when my oldest children were young. I wanted to replicate for them the entire experience of what I had felt as a child. I wanted all of the magic. I wanted the tree to seem huge. I wanted the decorations to be over the top. I wanted them to have every possible thing that seemed to be on their list, because I was trying to replicate something that had felt like the perfect Christmases from my childhood. And there were times that I felt like I got pretty close to that, although, you know, the field of debris after, particularly what it might do to our budget or my nerves or how I actually felt Christmas Day, just completely stressed or exhausted. Well, maybe that wasn't exactly what I had pictured for Christmas, but I was trying so hard to achieve something for my kids that was based pretty much on this idea of what Christmas had been like for me as a child. Well, one year, my brother Dave gave me a really important gift. He had all of our home movies, or the films, because when we were kids, pretty much all of our childhood memories were on that good old 8mm film. He had all of that transferred onto DVDs. And I had quite a little surprise, because when I went back and looked at those DVDs and looked at the Christmases of my childhood, what I realized was, well, yeah, it was a nice tree, and yeah, it had icicles on it, and that was cool. And yeah, it had all kinds of ornaments, but y'all, at the end of the day, it was a Christmas tree. And what I had remembered is this massive pile of presents was actually kind of modest. It was just very specific. My mom did a great job on a tight budget of getting us the very thing that we'd really, really wanted, being really intentional about that, but not necessarily making it all over the top. So it's so fascinating to me now to look back and realize the way that I had expanded what that Christmas felt like and how I had made that the marker of the Christmas that I really wanted, that I wanted for my kids, when it was something that wasn't actually exactly the way I remembered it when I looked back at it as an adult. Does it make those memories any less special? Absolutely not. Those memories of my childhood Christmases are still so wonderful. But once I watched those films afresh, as an adult, as a mom, trying to exist on a budget, as a mom, trying to make Christmas all the things, I began to realize, you know what? Sometimes Christmas may look like everything you've ever wanted. Maybe you've had one of those this year. Maybe this is the Christmas where finally you had that new baby in the house. Maybe this is the Christmas that finally you got engaged. Maybe this is the Christmas that finally you moved into that home that you've been saving for and dreaming for. Maybe this is that Christmas for you. And if that's true, I am so happy for you that you're getting to experience that. I've had some Christmases that were just everything that I had hoped they would be. Maybe this Christmas looked nothing like what you've wanted. Maybe your family was having a round with the flu, and so it was really hard for everybody to feel good and festive and excited about what was going on. Maybe you had a huge change this year that you didn't really foresee and you didn't want, and maybe something happened. Maybe you had to move out of that dream house. Maybe you were in a season of having to deal with a certain kind of loss, or maybe something hasn't come to fruition for you yet that you had hoped by this Christmas you would be able to realize, and it didn't happen. So maybe you've had a Christmas that was everything you wanted. Maybe you had a Christmas that was like nothing you wanted. Maybe you've had a Christmas that just looks very different than what you've had in the past. And it's not that it's bad. It's just different. And so it makes the traditions and the things that you've had before seem like they're a little bit missing, even though maybe you enjoyed this Christmas for what it was. We're getting ready to enter a season where Christmas for us is beginning to change. We've had many years now of it being at our home and with our kids and with us doing the traditions that we developed once Mike and I got married and had left our homes of origin. But we now have a child who's getting ready to get married in the spring. And I mean, if y'all can keep a secret, there just might be another one of my kids who might be getting engaged and married soon. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you updated. But knowing that, I now am not just trying to make sure that I'm making Christmas happen for our crew. I'm also needing to think about my son's fiance's family and the traditions and the things that they want to do. I don't want to put my son and my future daughter-in-law in a position where they feel like they're having to choose, or where one of them feels a loss that Christmas isn't what it should be or could have been or what it was in the past, because I'm trying to demand that we do it the same way we've always done it. So Christmas, sometimes for us, it's just that it's simply different, not right, wrong, or otherwise. It's just a lot different than what we've experienced in the past. And that can make us feel like that, oh, did it really feel like Christmas this year because we didn't do XYZ, or we had to change this up? Well, here's the thing that is true for all of us. Whether this Christmas was everything you wanted, was nothing you wanted, or was very different from what you've had in the past. Well, here's the one thing that's true for all of us when it comes to Christmas. Whether you've just gotten to experience the Christmas you always wanted, whether you just experienced a Christmas like you never wanted, whether you are having to, do some improv, Christmas is changing up, Christmas is going to be different. Whatever of those scenarios is true for you, here's the one thing that is true. Christmas for all of us, this Christmas, it's going to pass. It's going to change. It's going to be different next year. It's going to be different the year after that. So whether you are currently drafting off of just a Christmas glow because you pulled it off and the new house was all ready and that new baby was with you, or whether you just endured this Christmas, I just have to tell you, this too shall pass. You familiar with that phrase? This too shall pass. We say it to ourselves a lot of times when we're in a big challenge, and we comfort ourselves with this idea of this too shall pass. But even in the good times, we got to know too that even when everything turns out exactly the way we wanted, this too shall pass. And I don't mean that in a negative way or to try to, bring in some kind of negativity. All I'm saying is moments continue to speed on by. I don't know about you, but for me, 2019 has been an absolute blur. I've got to be honest. When I hit October, November of this year, I could not believe how fast this year has gone. And I know that can become something we say to each other, like, if time's so fast, it just goes faster and faster. But truly 2019, for some reason, and I really don't know why, but it was so fast. And it's interesting because I've talked with several people in my world that had the same feel this year about 2019, that it was just so quick. And I'm, been around long enough now to know that we're all going to turn around twice and it's going to be Christmas 2020. So this idea of this too shall pass, a lot of us tend to think that that's a Bible verse, and it actually is not. When I was a kid, we had a preacher and he taught what he called chimney corner verses. And the idea was these sayings and little mottos and things that we say to each other that we think are verses, and they're not. And this too shall pass is not a verse. But it is a saying that's been around for a long time, one that we often use. And there's actually a really interesting story about it. I'm going to put the resource for this in the show notes. I found this article on christianpost.com, and it talks about the origin of this phrase, this too shall pass. And it notes that a lot of us tend to think it's scripture. It's not, but the story behind it is really fascinating. There is a little shop in Jerusalem, and it sells rings and different bracelets and things like that. And some people like to have their names ordered in Hebrew so they can wear their name written in the Hebrew language around their neck, or a ring for their finger that has their name written in Hebrew. But the store says that one of the most popular pieces they sell there, it is a silver ring, and it has the Hebrew version of the words, this too shall pass. And the reason that it seems to be such a top seller there is that's a phrase that's always been very well known in Jerusalem. And there is a story behind that. Now, whether this story is true or it's a myth or it's somewhere in between, like one of those stories that maybe started out in some truth and then got, kind of pushed out of proportion. I don't know. But here's what this article says about this particular story. It says that the reason that this phrase, this too shall pass, is so popular around the Jerusalem area, even to the point that it makes this jewelry store one of the most popular with this piece that says this too shall pass in Hebrews, is because there was a man supposedly who came to Jerusalem because he was having a really, really hard time. He needed some help. He had some major challenges in his life. And so he decided to seek out King Solomon, who was known as the wisest of all men in his era. And so this man is able to have audience with King Solomon, and he lists all of the challenges and the problems that he has. And he then waits for King Solomon to share with him great wisdom. Well, according to the story, King Solomon gave him a ring that had the inscription, this too shall pass. The man found this wisdom and this gift of this ring to be so powerful, so potent in allowing him to face his future, that he was able to take it and find peace and left the city a different guy, even in the midst of when things had not gone the way that he had wanted, even in the midst of things being different than what he had anticipated. When it comes to this Christmas, that's one thing that I want you to think about. If you've had an awesome Christmas, I'm so glad. Would you treasure that? And just know that this too shall pass. Those traditions and things that we're so excited about that we've built into our family lives, we don't actually get to own them. Do you hear me on that? Like, we don't get to own that tradition. We just get to experience it and treasure it. If this Christmas was nothing like what you wanted, can I just tell you, this too shall pass. And I don't mean that in a flippant, cheeky way. I mean, sisters, I've had some Christmases that have been really, really hard, that I felt like we just had to gut our way through. But it helps to remember it's not always going to be like this. This too shall pass. And if you're in a season of transition where this Christmas was just really different than what you expected, not bad, maybe not great, different, well, this too shall pass also. I can remember when Michael and I got married, and all of a sudden, it wasn't about me going back to my parents' house and letting my mom do Christmas unto me, right? It was about Mike and I needing to develop our own traditions, our own rhythms, the things that we were going to put in place for our future family. And it was different. It was kind of weird to not be the one who was being served Christmas, but was trying to actually develop a Christmas and a Christmas tradition. And yet now I look back on those first couple of years we were married, when Christmas was now different than it had ever been. And those are really precious times. And they've passed. This too shall pass. But I can look back now and see the value and remember with fresh eyes what it was like to be newly married and projecting forward what we wanted Christmas to be like, what we wanted to take from each of our households of origin and incorporate into something that would be us in the way that we were going to celebrate the season. Now, this idea of this too shall pass, it's not that it's original to me. It's not that I've just figured this out about Christmas. When I look at the original Christmas story, when Jesus was born into this world in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, I find something in the book of Luke that makes me aware that Mary was very aware of this concept. I mean, let's face it. For this girl, her engagement and her coming wedding, they were going to look nothing like she had anticipated at all. For this girl, for where she was at in her life, she's now traveling to a place that she hasn't lived. She doesn't know. That may not have been anything that she ever wanted. To give birth to a baby alone with this fiance who has never touched her but is now going to have to help her deliver a baby. She's without her mom. She's without her Aunt Elizabeth. She is in a stable. I mean, this would match none of the birth plans that we have all so lovingly put together for the births of our own children. And yet she has this baby, and she takes such note of all of the events that happen afterward. In the book of Luke, it says that these shepherds come, that they have been informed of the birth of Jesus, and they come to see him and to experience what this is like. And I can only imagine the tumult of all of that, of having this newborn in this city far away from anything you've ever known, with this fiance that in some ways you barely know, and your story is so different than you would have thought. And what Luke tells us in Luke 2:19 is that with all of this activity, all of this clamor, all of the things that have happened, Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She didn't push back against the season. She didn't wish one way or another. She paid attention. And I think the reason she treasured and stored these things up in her heart is I believe that she knew this fresh season of having this new baby, of being with this fiance, of this travel, of the things she was experiencing and witnessing, it was going to pass. That first Christmas story would pass, and the story of Jesus would grow and spread and change. There would be things in that story that I'm sure were very much the way that Mary always hoped when it came to raising a little boy, when it came to finally marrying Joseph, when it came to building a family life. And of course, there were things driven from that original Christmas story that were things Mary never would have wanted. And then there were those things that were very, very different. But I love early on in Jesus' life, she knows to treasure and ponder the things in the moment that are happening outside of her expectations, outside of her disappointments, outside of whether she thinks something is the way it's supposed to be or not. I think in that way, she exhibits to us and teaches us afresh in this Christmas season that those things that are good, those things that are bad, those things that are different, they're momentary. They're momentary. They pass. And so I'm challenged this Christmas, and I hope you are too, to gather in those things that are sweet, to treasure those things that are going just like we'd hoped, and for those things that are not of what we would want, that we would remember that they're transitory as well. It's not always going to be like this. We serve a God of hope. We serve a God of anticipation. It's not always going to be this way. And for those things that are different, there will come a time that what has felt different this year is actually going to become a beloved tradition. Have you thought about that? Like the new people who showed up, or the ways that different ideas and traditions have crept into what you were going to do this year in ways you didn't anticipate. There will come a time a few years from now where that's going to feel like, oh yeah, this is our Christmas tradition. And that which has been different becomes very familiar. So this feeling that it's so different, well, that too shall pass. So on this Christmas of 2019, I just want to encourage you, for whatever kind of day you've had, for whatever kind of season it has been, I pray that you find the joy in it. I pray that you release the hurt from it. And I pray in all of it that what you treasure in your heart, what you tuck deep inside this Christmas, is that there is a God of hope who, as we celebrate in this season, sent his Son so that we can know that the things that happen to us on this earth, the good and the bad, all of it is redeemed by him. All of it is meant to be part of our story that we understand in full when we reach eternity. I'm so thankful that you join me here each and every week for the Modern Motherhood Podcast from All Mom Does. I would love for you to reach out on social media. I'm Julie Lyles Carr on Facebook and Instagram and all those places. And please be sure and check out allmomdoes.com. It's a community that's been so lovingly put together, both as a blog site with all kinds of posts and tools and equipping for you, and also on social media, where you can find a community of women who are seeking the same things you are, just trying to figure out how to parent their kids well and walk out their romance well and live their faith walk well and chase that work life well. All of that, you're going to find community and friendship there. I really encourage you to hop over the socials and check out All Mom Does. It would not be possible to do this without Donna, who is our producer, and Rebecca Beckett, who is our content coordinator. They're incredible. And I just want to give a big shout out and thank you, so much gratitude for them and all that they do. They have you so in mind for every episode we produce. There's conversation about how these different episodes might hit you, the things we want to be sensitive about, the things we want to equip you and challenge you in. These two women are so thoughtful in what they bring to the table for the podcast. And I just hope you have an opportunity to give them a thanks, to go subscribe and follow and review the podcast. That really helps us know if it's resonating with you and how we can be of help to you. We have a fun episode coming up for you that's going to wrap up 2019. And then we have all kinds of great things planned for 2020. But you know what? For now, let me just say this. A very, very Merry Christmas to you and yours. God bless.